John, witaj w Warszawie, w Polsce. Znamy się jeszcze z czasów, gdy ani ty nie byłeś sekretarzem stanu, ani ja nie byłem ministrem spraw zagranicznych. I bardzo się cieszę, że jesteśmy w stałym kontakcie i to nie tylko związanym z Syrią i naszymi stosunkami bilateralnymi. Nasze dzisiejsze spotkanie potwierdza dobre, strategiczne stosunki pomiędzy Stanami Zjednoczonymi a Polską. Przykładami tych więzi jest współpraca i polityczna, i wojskowa. Mamy także ważne interesy gospodarcze i prowadzimy dialog demokratyzacyjny. Wspominając te wspólne działania, chciałbym Ci serdecznie podziękować za wczorajszą wizytę na grobie Tadeusza Mazowieckiego, pierwszego niekomunistycznego premiera, dzięki któremu jesteśmy tu, gdzie jesteśmy, który zaczął drogę Polski do Unii Europejskiej, do NATO, drogę do wolności, drogę do Polski jako kraju bezpiecznego i coraz zamożniejszego. W przyszłym roku szczyt Sojuszu Północnoatlantyckiego w Londynie. Podsumujemy operację wspólną w Afganistanie i nakreślimy dalsze działania Sojuszu na rzecz wspólnego bezpieczeństwa. A nawiązując do tematyki afgańskiej, mnie osobiście szczególnie bliskiej, chciałbym wobec polskich mediów przypomnieć sierżanta Michaela Olisa, który 28 sierpnia podczas ataku na polską bazę poświęcił swoje życie, aby uratować polskiego żołnierza. Myślę, że nie ma bardziej wymownego przykładu polsko-amerykańskiego braterstwa broni. Jeszcze raz chciałbym złożyć kondolencje rodzinie sierżanta Olisa i podziękować za współpracę wojskową z siłami amerykańskimi w Afganistanie. Przedyskutowaliśmy wszystkie bieżące kwestie na agendzie międzynarodowej. John właśnie wraca z Bliskiego Wschodu, ale nie tylko partnerstwo, nie tylko sąsiedztwo południowe Unii Europejskiej, także sąsiedztwo wschodnie. Zbliżający się szczyt Partnerstwa Wschodniego i kwestia, która się waży, czyli kwestia podpisania przez Ukrainę umowy stowarzyszeniowej z Unią Europejską. Polska popiera z oczywistych względów podpisanie umowy o strefie wolnego handlu pomiędzy Unią Europejską a Stanami Zjednoczonymi. Obiecaliśmy sobie konsultacje w tej sprawie. Polska jest też jednym z tych krajów, który uważa, że dla dobra środowiska, ale także dla dobra naszych gospodarek w Europie, w Polsce powinniśmy eksploatować zasoby gazu łupkowego, a gaz powinien przypłynąć do naszego terminala LNG także ze Stanów Zjednoczonych. Jeszcze raz serdecznie witam w Polsce i życzę udanej reszty wizyty. Dziękuję.
Well, Radek, thank you very much. Witam serdecznie. I'm very honored to be here with all of you, and I'm particularly grateful to revisit with my friend, the Foreign Minister of Poland. We have collaborated on a number of different issues and engaged in a number of important and close constructive dialogues. And he has visited with me in Washington. I'm now privileged to visit with him here. And together we have met at a number of other multilateral meetings. It's a pleasure for me to be back in Poland. I've had the privilege of being here a number of times, particularly for environmental conferences, and we applaud Poland's extraordinary leadership with respect to the environment and environmental issues. And it's no accident that I chose to be here in Poland for my first bilateral meeting in Central Europe. In less than 25 years since the restoration of democracy, the Polish people have turned the country into an economic and security powerhouse. And the progress that has been made is really quite extraordinary. And the impact of Poland is really felt now throughout the transatlantic community. Last night, as Radek mentioned, I had the privilege of standing at the gravesite of former Foreign Minister Mazowiecki. It was a very moving moment. It was very beautiful in that cemetery with the birch trees and the aroma of the birch trees and the flowers on the graves and the lights of all the various candles. It was really mystical, spiritual, and I was very proud to lay a wreath from the people of the United States to recognize the extraordinary contribution of this man to the cause of freedom and independence and human rights. It is a great story. I also, knowing the history of this great city and of Poland itself, cannot help but come here with a sense of respect for the remarkable journey of the Polish people. Warsaw, the name Warsaw is associated with so much. The Warsaw Pact, the Warsaw Convention, the Warsaw Uprising, the resistance and the incredible rebuilding of an entire country has come out of the remarkable spirit of the Polish people. And so I feel privileged as an American and as an American Secretary of State who has great appreciation, having run for President of the United States, for the vast diaspora of the Polish people that contribute to the United States now as Polish Americans. So I'm glad to come back here. I'm struck by how much has changed in just one generation, and frankly, how much of that change came from the visionary leadership of the Prime Minister, President Mazowiecki, and also of other great Polish leaders whose names are known around the world. Prime Minister Mazowiecki was obviously an advocate for the best of human rights, the best of democracy, and he launched Poland's extraordinary aspirations that now neighbors and friends around the world can touch and appreciate. I'm also proud that in this march of progress, the United States and Poland, as allies and friends, continue to promote our shared values and our shared aspirations. And our partnership, quite frankly, is growing stronger because of that. On the economic side, today, the Foreign Minister and I discussed the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership, TTIP as it's known, which can lead to even further economic and political transformation. In addition, as a NATO member now for almost 15 years, and as an EU member for nearly 10 years, Poland's influence in both organizations has grown significantly over that time. And that is because of the smart choices that the Polish people continue to make. You are opening markets. You are embracing transparency. You are continuing with your defense modernization and building the strength of the country. You are continuing to diversify your energy marketplace. And you are generously supporting the democratic EU and have begun negotiating and recognizing our shared interest in a comprehensive economic agreement that can grow both of our countries and all of the region. Europe and the United States joined together in an economic association will be one of the most powerful economic forces on the planet, and it will raise the standards by which all countries are engaging in economic activity. Poland is also the largest commercial partner of the United States in Central Europe, and our bilateral trade has quadrupled over the course of the last 10 years. We think we can do even better, and we believe that the TTIP is the key to being able to do that. On the environmental front, as I mentioned earlier in my comments, Poland is not only hosting the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change for the 19th Conference of the Parties next week, but Poland continues to send a signal for all of us that we need to demonstrate our commitment to a cleaner energy base and to live up to our responsibilities to lower emissions on a global basis. As NATO allies, our security partnership from Afghanistan to Kosovo to WASC, all of these right here in Poland at the air base make our relationship even more important and stronger. I look forward to going to WASC later in the day and saluting the work of our armed forces and the work that they accomplish together. I also want to commend Poland for its $45 billion investment in defense modernization. The United States defense industry, which we believe is the most innovative, creative, and technologically advanced in the world, is going to compete vigorously here with our government in support of the goals and the upgrades that Poland seeks. Poland is a very important part of the European phased adaptive approach on NATO missile defense. And we will deploy a missile defense site in Poland in the 2018 timeframe. We're also enormously proud of our work together to promote democracy on this continent and around the world. I want to commend Minister Sikorski for his tireless efforts, and in particular for mentoring the Eastern Partnership countries in advance of the meeting in Vilnius. This is a very important opportunity for everybody, and I think Poland has been front and center in its efforts to help advance all of our interests through that association. The bottom line is this: Poland is thriving, and our alliance is thriving. And I look forward to celebrating here today the economic and security benefits with the leaders of Poland, and I particularly look forward to continuing to grow this partnership, respectful, enormously respectful of the extraordinary history of the people of Poland, of this city, of this region, mindful that we always have to be vigilant. We know that things can change. The march of democracy is important. We believe in it, but it takes work. It takes nurturing. And all of us have a responsibility to continue to do our part in order to live up to the legacy left us by those who weren't as lucky as we are today, some of whom gave their lives, many of whom were dislocated, all of whom have been through an extraordinary history to arrive at the place we are today. We have work to do, but the journey of the past convinces us we can get that work done. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo, czas na pytania. Pierwsze pytanie dla mediów polskich. Pan redaktor Cegielski, Polskie Radio. Bardzo proszę.
Dzień dobry. Pytanie do panów ministrów. Kilka dni temu minister Sikorski w Polskim Radiu mówił, że będzie okazja zapytać na najwyższym szczeblu o kwestię podsłuchów. Chciałem zatem zapytać, czy ta kwestia była poruszana i co panowie powiedzieli? No i pytanie do pana sekretarza Kerego, czy Amerykanie podsłuchiwali bądź podsłuchują polskich polityków? Dziękuję.
Rozmawialiśmy o tym i uzgodniliśmy bliższe konsultacje między naszymi służbami, jak zwalczać wspólne zagrożenia.
Happy to say to you that this is a subject obviously of concern, and we understand that to people. First of all, we need to understand, as the as the foreign minister does, we're all in this together. We are all in the effort to try to be able to provide protection to our citizens, and we have to strike the right balance between protecting our citizens and obviously privacy of all of our citizens. That is a balance that we do try to strike. The President of the United States has ordered a complete review of all of our activity, and we will work very closely with our friends in order to make certain that the road ahead is one that is understood and that is mutually agreed upon.
The next question will be from Joe Biddle of AFP.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Could I just follow up on the NSA allegations and with respect to how the fallout from these revelations might affect the TTIP talks, which are going to resume from November the 11th in Brussels. It was announced yesterday. Secretary Kerry, how do you think the trade talks will be affected by these revelations, which have left some of the European leaders in very political difficulties back home? And Foreign Minister Zagorski, also how concerned is Poland about the fallout on US-EU relations as a result of this? And if I could just ask one more to Foreign Minister Zagorski on the CIA, the allegations of a CIA prison in Poland. There's a European Court of Human Rights hearing next month, and I believe that the Polish government has asked for this to be closed to the public and press. Why is that? And how is your own government investigation into this going, and are the Americans participating? Thank you.
Well, let me say, first of all, we are very appreciative of the foreign ministers and Poland's strong support for the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership. This is a trade partnership that has the ability to lift all of our countries. Europe has obviously been having a very challenging economic time. The United States has also had its challenges. We're starting to come back and get a lot stronger. But the Transatlantic Trade Partnership is really separate from and different from any other issues that people may have on their minds. This is about jobs. It's about the economy. It's about economic competition in a global community that competes sometimes by rules that are very questionable and shaky. If the United States and the European community can come together around this transatlantic trade partnership, we have the ability to raise the standards by which countries around the world are doing business. And we will have one of the most powerful economic marketplaces on the face of this planet. Together, that can have a profound positive impact for our people. It will put millions of people to work, create new jobs, more opportunities, and it's worth pushing for. Now, that should not be confused with whatever legitimate questions exist with respect to NSA or other activities. And as I have said previously, we want to hear from our allies. We want to have this conversation. President Obama welcomes this opportunity to work with our allies, and ultimately, if we get it right, which we will, we can not only alleviate concerns, but we can actually strengthen our intelligence relationships going forward, and we can all be more secure and safer as a result, as well as protecting the privacy of citizens. We will work together very effectively on this.
Redaktor Wroński, proszę.
Umowa TTIP o pogłębionym wolnym handlu ma być umową między Unią Europejską a Stanami Zjednoczonymi. Przypominam, że jesteśmy w tych rozmowach reprezentowani przez Komisję Europejską, która ma wyłączną kompetencję w tej sprawie. Unia Europejska natomiast nie ma kompetencji w sprawach współpracy wywiadowczej. Sprawy współpracy wywiadowczej są bardzo ważne, także upewnienie się, że nasze prawa i regulacje i procedury nadążają za postępem technologicznym, tak aby obywatele czuli się bezpiecznie, a sojusze nie były nadwyrężane poprzez takie zdarzenia jak jak ucieczka pana Snowdena, ale to są dwa różne porządki. Jeden w samej Europie wspólnotowy, a drugi narodowy pomiędzy poszczególnymi krajami a Stanami Zjednoczonymi. I jak już wspomniałem, obiecaliśmy sobie bliższą współpracę między naszymi służbami, tak aby upewnić się, że w tej współpracy jest pełna szczerość, ale także aby nasi obywatele mieli rękojmię tego, że ich życie osobiste nie jest przedmiotem bezprawnego zainteresowania. Jeśli chodzi o drugie pytanie, to pani sama sobie odpowiedziała na to pytanie, bo Polska rzeczywiście jest jedynym krajem, który prowadzi śledztwo w sprawie tych domniemanych aktywności. Śledztwo ma charakter niejawny, a więc i materiały muszą mieć charakter niejawny, a więc także to, co chcielibyśmy ewentualnie komunikować międzynarodowym instytucjom. Dziękuję bardzo.
Redaktor Wroński, Gazeta Wyborcza.
Pierwsze pytanie do pana ministra Kerego. Na początku roku Stany Zjednoczone zmieniły plany dotyczące tarczy antyrakietowej, zwracając uwagę, że ze względu na mniejsze zagrożenie nie będzie realizowany 4. etap tarczy antyrakietowej w Polsce. Czy wobec obecnej sytuacji, kiedy zmniejsza się zagrożenie Syrii, bo tam trwa wojna domowa, a retoryka Iranu jest trochę inna, plany budowy tarczy antyrakietowej nie zostaną zmienione w Polsce albo w jakiś sposób zrewidowane? I jak Stany Zjednoczone chcą współpracować przy budowie polskiej tarczy antyrakietowej? I pytanie do ministra Sikorskiego. Czy pan minister otrzymał jasną deklarację ze strony pana ministra Kerego, że polscy politycy nie byli podsłuchiwani w ramach programu NSA? I zabrzmiało dosyć niepokojące słowo konsultacje. Czy to może znaczyć, że Amerykanie mają wcześniej uprzedzać, jak będą podsłuchiwać, czy może razem będziemy podsłuchiwali? Co to słowo znaczy w tym kontekście?
To są bardzo dobre pytania do sekretarza stanu.
Thank you. Obviously, it's premature to make any kind of judgment that would alter the current path, because there's nothing that's been altered otherwise. We don't have an agreement with Iran. Nothing has changed, and the plans for missile defense are absolutely on target. We've already, on October 28th, we broke ground on the phase 2 adaptive, and we intend to provide for the next phase by 2018. And we'll deploy that site by that period of time. That is our plan. And nothing has changed in that at this point in time. I don't foresee it changing at this point. And obviously, we will fulfill our obligations and work together with the government of Poland with respect to the deployment.
The last question will be from Scott Stearns of VOA.
A question for both of you, if I might. With U.S. and Russian officials meeting in Geneva today on the Syria talks, Syria's information minister has said that the Assad government will not take part in Geneva II if the goal is the removal of the Assad government. You said yesterday in Saudi Arabia, Mr. Secretary, that that was the goal of Geneva II. So how do you move forward to a negotiated settlement where one, if not both, of the parties to the Syrian conflict are doubtful to attend Geneva II?
Well, the words regime and individuals and this and that get confused in this process. The Assad regime knows full well that the purpose of Geneva II is to implement Geneva I. That has always been true. The Russians have accepted that. Every support group of the Syrian opposition has accepted that. The purpose is to implement Geneva I. What does that mean? What is Geneva I? Geneva I calls for the installation of a transition government with full executive authority by mutual consent. So both parties have to agree to put in place a transition government that is neutral, that will bring about a choice for the Syrian people for the long-term future. Now, I don't know how anybody believes the opposition is going to give mutual consent to Assad to continue. And the Syrian government has accepted to come to Geneva. So I hope that the Syrian government and the Russians and Iranians and others who support the Syrian regime will make certain that the Syrian regime will live up to its obligation to come to Geneva to negotiate a peaceful resolution of the conflict in Syria. And we and others have already indicated we are prepared to be there, and the opposition is. The opposition received a very significant boost yesterday from the Arab League, which overwhelmingly stated a very strong resolution saying that the opposition must go to Geneva. Geneva is important, and Geneva will provide a way to have a negotiated solution here. One thing is certain: there is no military solution to the conflict in Syria. It can only be resolved through a political negotiation. And the framework for that negotiation has been accepted by the international community. It is Geneva II negotiation to implement Geneva I transition government. And we hope that the Assad regime will live up to its already stated promise to be there and to negotiate. And I think it speaks for itself.
Polska popierała zniszczenie syryjskiego arsenału chemicznego wtedy, gdy to wydawało się bardzo mało prawdopodobne, a dziś jest rzeczywistością. Więc tak samo popieramy rozmowy polityczne, bo uważamy, że to jest ostatnia szansa dla Syrii. Dla Syrii, ale także uważamy, że potrzebne jest negocjowane rozwiązanie problemu ambicji nuklearnych Iranu. I chciałbym też podziękować i pogratulować Johnowi Kerry'emu za wszystko, co robi, aby wspomóc proces pokojowy pomiędzy Izraelem a Palestyńczykami. Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękuję panom ministrom, dziękuję państwu.